My name is John Sangaris, and I'm a technical manager with Optiv. Today I'm going to talk about what traditional Eastern medicine can teach us about AppSec programs. Before we go into that, I'm going to share a little bit about me. I've been a software developer for about 38 years, 24 professionally. I started back in the days on the Commodore VIC-20, Commodore 64 and 128. So all my Commodore people unite. And I've been in almost every single role for software development, all the way from enterprise architecture down to startups where you have an idea and nothing else, and you're starting from scratch, no pipeline, no anything. I've also been a Scrum Master. I was a police officer for a little bit as well. It was a long story, which I'm not going to share, but I thought helping my community was the way to go, and doing it through serving as a police officer was great. However, I'm not much of a political person. As well, I kind of like to pay my mortgage and eat in the same month. So after a few years, I left that police officer position and went back to software engineering, at which time I became a security champion for my team. And then I developed into building application security programs at the enterprise level. And that's basically what I do today, is focus on application security programs, creating new ideas, new thought leadership, and sharing that with colleagues. I'm also a Freemason. I'm still a reserve deputy with the local sheriff, where I fly drones for the sheriff. But my policy is no pay, no politics, and that has survived the last 12 years. So I'm gonna stick with that. As long as I don't get paid for it, I'm very happy to do that job. I'm also a member of InfraGard. I do want to make a quick disclaimer about this talk. I'm going to be comparing traditional Eastern medicine and traditional Western medicine, simply for their approach to handling issues. What I'm not criticizing, and I want to make this absolutely clear, I'm not criticizing or even talking about our medical practitioners. This has nothing to do with them. I'm not talking about what they do, their job, their qualifications, what's good, what's bad. This talk has nothing to do with that. I have the utmost respect for our medical practitioners. I think they do a bang-up job, especially putting me back together every time I break myself. So thank you to anybody that is a medical practitioner. But I want to be very clear. This talk is comparing, and I want to be clear, it's traditional Eastern medicine, traditional Western medicine, and their approaches. And that's the end of the comparison and the involvement of medicine. So I just want to be clear on that. Before medicine happens, we have problems. And for us, the thing that precedes actual involvement in medicine are symptoms. We don't just wake up and say, hey, I have a problem, I'm going to go see a doctor. We have some kind of symptom in our body, whether it's a fever, a chill, a headache, something that seems out of the ordinary. Now, as we get older, we get used to some of these problems and say, well, I have a headache, but I'm not going to go, pay a copay and see a doctor because I know it's going to be gone tomorrow. But still, our medicine and our doctors look for symptoms. If we go into the doctor and we say, I think there's a problem, and the doctor says, what are your symptoms? And we say, well, I don't have any symptoms, right? They're going to kick us out of the office. Sometimes they'll potentially entertain, maybe looking and poking and prodding. If we say we had a symptom yesterday, but it's gone today, that doesn't necessarily mean that the problem itself is gone that's causing the symptom. But if we say we never had symptoms, right? I just came in simply because I think there's a problem. they may refer you to other types of help. In the end, traditional Western medicine kicks in when we begin to have symptoms. Now, when we have symptoms, we then seek help to fix these sometimes. To fix them, we sometimes ignore them. Maybe if you have the experience, I have a headache every once in a while under a certain condition, and you know when that condition goes away. Maybe it's heat related, or it's too bright out. Or maybe you're just stubborn and you're like, well, this broken leg will heal itself. I can power through it. Unfortunately, sometimes we use those tactics to solve these symptoms. And sometimes, based on experience, we can get away with it. Like, it's hot today, I have a headache, I just need to drink more water. But sometimes when we ignore broken legs, thinking we'll just power through it and it'll get better by itself, we cause obviously more problems. We sometimes hope that the problems go away by themselves. Sometimes we'll actually fix them. Maybe the headache is caused, like I said, due to heat, and you just need to drink more water. You take an aspirin, or you go to the doctor and say, look, I've had a chronic, persistent headache for a while, and I need help. And then you get a fix from the doctor. And then some people complain about symptoms and problems that don't actually exist. And while I would love to say this is simply a medical situation, I know that we probably have all experienced people in the business world that also complain about problems that don't actually exist. So why is this problematic? Why is it problematic that our medicine is predicated off of fixing and treating symptoms? Part of it is because we're reactive instead of proactive. Well, how do you even be proactive in medicine if it's predicated off of symptoms? You can't go in and say, I may have a headache tomorrow, right? The doctor's not going to help you. Proactivity is a healthy situation, right? You want to be able to eat better tomorrow than you did today. And if you go into your doctor and say, I would like a prescription for how to eat healthy, they're going to refer you to someone that's not traditionally part of the medical establishment, such as a dietitian or a nutritionist. If you say, I want to be able to run faster, or perhaps you have some kind of back pain because your core is weak, and you have a sedentary lifestyle, perhaps you work at a desk all day and you go home and you sit at the table and play games with your family, and you don't have much in your life beyond that. The proactive course here would be to introduce exercise to build those muscles to help with that area of your body. However, you don't go to the doctor and ask for a prescription. And by prescription, I mean, here's a set of instructions to follow that are going to take you from having back pain because you have a weak core to having a strong core. They're going to refer you to somebody who is traditionally external to the medical establishment, such as a personal trainer or someone in that industry. The point is, when we talk about proactivity in our health, we have to go outside of what is traditionally considered the medical establishment. We have to go to other private companies who will then help us eat better or exercise better or become healthier overall. The doctor will help you if you're behind. So if you have high cholesterol, they may be able to tell you what medications you could take, or perhaps what general steps you can take as far as diet and lifestyle, but they're going to give you the generalities. They won't tell you that you need to do 3 sets of whatever exercise and do 5 reps in between for increasing your heart health or dealing with a specific area you're trying to improve. Another reason why it's problematic to be symptom first is that it increases the risk that the problem grows before we respond. So while we start looking at the symptom and just treating for that symptom, the underlying problem can continue to grow. Take cancer, for instance. If you're starting to complain about a headache or other pain in your body, and we try to treat that one symptom, then the underlying problem will continue to grow because we're not treating that underlying problem. As well, the magnitude and urgency of the problem is also unknown. A headache can be anything from you just need to drink an extra bottle of water to you have an impending serious condition that can have life-altering effects. So let's do a side-by-side between traditional Eastern medicine and traditional Western medicine approaches really quick. Western medicine really approaches a problem and the fix by looking at the symptom and then applying a fix. And if that doesn't fix it, then if that symptom persists, they apply another fix and then another fix. And after a whole bunch of fixes or tests, they usually come to the underlying cause. Now, part of the reasoning they take this approach is because many insurance companies require a least cost approach to begin with. So let's try the lowest cost medicine and then the more expensive medicine and then the more expensive medicine. And then let's do the other tests. And they start applying higher and higher cost solutions or procedures to try to determine and fix this problem, but only if that symptom persists. Conversely, the traditional Eastern approach is to look at all the systems within the body that may factor in or affect where a problem is. And they view the entire body as one system. Now, I'm not saying Western medicine doesn't view it as one system, but the approach considers how much caffeine are you taking in and how often do you exercise? Have you been fighting with your spouse, right? All the components that actually factor into stress levels and dietary conditions, they look at the entire system in order to troubleshoot a problem. On top of that, their medicine isn't relegated to fixing symptoms, but it's also proactive. Their medicinal system includes creating healthy bodies, improving performance, and ensuring that longevity and healthiness is a priority as we age. But in the end, they look at these various systems within the body and try to troubleshoot using the systemic way, looking at the balance of that body, as opposed to, here's a symptom, what immediate Band-Aid can I give you to make that symptom go away? Because as we've discussed, that may not be the problem. Fundamentally, those are the big differences. Is with traditional Western, we're trying to make the symptom go away, and if it doesn't, then we keep going. With traditional Eastern, we take a systemic look to identify the problem and solve the problem, thereby solving the symptom as well, but not necessarily directly treating that symptom. This is all well and good, but how exactly does this relate to AppSec programs? And I'm going to break it down into two ways. One is the symptomatic fix, and one is the holistic approach. So as far as a symptomatic fix, when we have an issue with security or with our application security program, when we look at a symptomatic fix, that fix may not actually fix our problem. We may see some pain point in DevSecOps. Maybe a tool isn't working properly, but solving for that and fixing that symptom may not actually solve the problem that is causing that symptom. Another issue with symptomatic fixes for AppSec programs is that when you piecemeal a solution, you basically follow a trail of symptoms. So if you try to, let's say you have a tool that's installed and it's not installed correctly or configured correctly, and either is not producing the output you expect or is causing significant developer or development issues with delays in either running the tools or getting the results from the tool. And when you piecemeal this fix and find out that that's not actually solving the overall problem, then you look for the next symptom or try to apply a different fix to the same symptom. And that piecemeal symptomatic fix can also cause budget issues in spending on the various fixes to find the right one. Basically, you're trying aspirin, then you're trying Tylenol, then you're trying heavier or different medications to fix your application security program. And from an application security standpoint, that may mean hiring a consultant to fix your tool, or perhaps buying another tool because the one that you haven't identified that it's misconfigured. You just know that it's not working. So you take that tool out, you've lost that money that you've used to purchase the license to that tool. You buy another tool with a promise that that's going to fix your problem. And it doesn't. Because the problem may be a staffing issue. You're understaffed for the skill set required to actually implement these tools properly. And that may be your root cause, is just not having the right resources on your team. Finally, a symptomatic fix can actually mask the problem. So just like taking an aspirin may make your headache go away, but your headache may be symptomatic of possibly having too much caffeine during the day, or a precursor to having heat stroke, which would obviously need a different solution and a different fix to actually fix that problem. But taking aspirin might mask that symptom. Same as implementing a piecemeal fix to fix a symptom within your application security program may mask what the actual underlying problem is. Let's take, for instance, what we've already discussed. You have a tool that's supposed to be part of your DevSecOps process. Let's say it's a SaaS tool. For those that don't know, that's a static analysis or static code analysis tool. And you have this tool implemented, and it's not implemented correctly. It's not giving you the results, and it's causing pain points and issues within that DevSecOps lifecycle. So you bring in somebody from the outside, a contractor, a consultant. They come in and they fix that tool. So now it's working properly. It's giving the results that it should, and it's working properly within the DevSecOps pipeline. That consultant now leaves, and you're stuck with the same problem that you had before, which is you don't have the proper staffing to understand how these pieces should be going together, how to configure them, how to make them work within the constraints and within the goals of an actual DevSecOps program. And that underlying of not having the right resources, which, let's face it, cybersecurity, application security, there is a deficit of qualified and skilled candidates. But unless you actually know that your problem is you don't have enough qualified or skilled candidates or staff to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish, you're going to have this rinse and repeat situation where you're going to have somebody who may not be qualified implement a solution. The solution's not going to be implemented correctly, and it's going to cause you to then again hire somebody skilled to come in temporarily, fix that problem, and not really address the overall problem of lack of skill set and skilled resources. Now, like I said, we're all having that problem right now. That's the industry we're in. But at least having that knowledge, you can shortcut the fix instead of having somebody try to implement a solution incorrectly and then having to pay somebody to come back after and fix it, knowing that you don't have the right staff or the right skill set, you can simply go directly to hiring somebody that's skilled for a short time to implement this solution. It doesn't necessarily solve your problem, but at least you've identified your problem and you can work within the confines of what that problem actually is, rather than trying to piecemeal these, masking the problem of not having enough skilled resources. Now, let's look at what a holistic, proactive methodology looks like from an AppSec point of view. Let's just assume that we have a symptom. Just like we always do with medicine, there's a symptom and that precedes actually doing something about it. So you have a symptom inside your AppSec program. Holistic proactivity will help you understand all the factors that play into why this symptom exists. As we've already discussed, not having the right skill set to implement a certain tool could be the issue or the underlying problem that's causing the symptom. Perhaps you keep getting hacked through software you didn't even know that you've created, and that's in production and therefore has no ongoing application security program applied to it at all. There's no system, there's no controls other than what were put in place 20 years ago. And because that program worked and it's never broken, it does one thing, you don't even know it exists because nobody tracks it anymore. So having a holistic, proactive program will allow you to understand what your application portfolio looks like and what your threat landscape looks like. All the components and all the pieces that go into why is there a threat and what is the threat to your application, and what's the issue within your program. If it's a bottleneck or if there's incorrect results, having that holistic view allows you to understand that fundamental problem rather than just trying to look at what the symptom is, fixing the symptom, and then not really progressing your application security posture. As well, having a holistic program lets you strategize solutions rather than attempting solutions. When you piecemeal your security controls in your program, there's typically no implementation, no coherent implementation of those controls beginning to end, following the pipeline and the path of software development. And because of that, you're having to be reactive to issues or attempt to implement a tool, not having a full understanding of how that one tool is going to affect your actual full AppSec posture. And when you implement a holistic, proactive program, you are empowering your team to strategize solutions as opposed to reacting to solutions. And strategizing looks like the team looking at what they have, what's implemented, what does the program look like, and being able to ask questions. Where are the pain points? What's causing the pain points? And extrapolating that higher level of understanding of what the program is, what the program's doing, and then what may be causing that symptom. And obviously you have to fix that symptom, but maybe putting efforts and energy and resources further up the pipeline may be where it's actually needed, as opposed to where the symptom appears. Just like when, if you hurt an arm or a leg, sometimes the bottom of your leg hurts, but you actually hurt the top of your leg. So where the pain actually isn't always indicative of where the problem is. And having that ability to strategize a solution is really important, especially because it ensures that the budget that you spend aligns with the solution and the value that solution is providing. So if you have, let's say, a $100,000 budget to fix this one problem, you can align that fix better with where the problem is, as opposed to attempting a fix where the symptom is and where the pain point is, and then having to re-spend to fix it again later. A holistic proactive program also allows you to create measurable efficiencies within that program. If you piecemeal parts together, let's say you have some SAS tools, some DAS tools, they work independently, they don't feed into a common vulnerability management program. There's no way to measure from a strategy or a high level the metrics that matter for that level of the pipeline. For instance, if you implement a new SAST tool and you've not previously had a baseline for that application, or you don't baseline, you simply run the tool and the tool may say you have 500 vulnerabilities. Once you have somebody triage them, maybe it gets down to, well, you actually only have 30 vulnerabilities within your code. And what happens next time you run that SAST tool? Does it say you have another 30 vulnerabilities? Are the same vulnerabilities? Are they new vulnerabilities? How do you track that? Without a coherent, holistic program, those numbers get lost and don't give you the ability to measure from a program level how granular changes like configuring your SAST tool optimally actually benefits you. You can't measure that. We have to have a before and after, right? You can't improve something unless you can measure something. And a holistic program gives you that ability, to gives you numbers and KPIs and measurement data from all the components of an application security program. So you can see at a snapshot, is your program healthy? Are there opportunities to grow? Is there measurable efficiency within that program? If there isn't, is it because we're measuring the wrong things or because we're inefficient? But at least we have somewhere to start to troubleshoot the underlying problem. Better visibility into all the metrics, down to the granular level, is vital in order to optimize your program and increase your security posture. So what does application security program holism actually look like? There are so many models out there. The main two are OWASP SAM and BSIM. Those are the popular ones. There are multiple models. However, these models do two things. One, they provide a checklist of, are you doing the right things? Two, they provide a maturity number that gives you a single number that allows you to determine where am I on the spectrum of maturity. And, if we've done a certain effort, or if we plan on doing a certain effort, how does that affect our maturity, our measurability and maturity? While these models tell you what should be in an application security program and how to mature those specific components, they don't actually inform you on how to build an application security program. Just like starting a restaurant, you can have the health inspector come in with their checklist and they can say, are your floors clean? Do your employees wash their hands? Is your refrigeration unit maintained? Do you change out the oil in your fryer at some frequency? They can give you the checklist. They can check you off and say, yes, they're taking care of all these, or no, they're not taking care of all these. And they can give some kind of criticality to these issues. Perhaps not emptying your employee bathroom garbage is not a good thing if you don't do it every day. But putting raw chicken on the same counter that you also make pizza on could actually cause somebody to become very, very sick. So the criticality of some issues are greater than others. However, if you wanted to open a business, right? Open a restaurant tomorrow. And you wanted to ensure that you opened that restaurant in the right manner, prioritizing the right things. It's very difficult to go from a checklist to implementing that checklist or implementing the business surrounding that checklist without having prior knowledge. So it usually takes somebody with some experience and a background in application security to when they do a SAM assessment or a BSIM assessment, to interpret those results such that you may have missed certain items on the checklist, and here are the opportunities to implement those items. But which one should you implement first? Which one can you implement and actually get increase in your security posture rather than just implementing it and it may or may not check a box, but it doesn't actually affect your security posture? Saying that, there are some high-level major components that your application security program should implement. And again, these are high-level. There are so many pieces underneath these sections that I'm not even going to try to break it down any further than this. But these are your high-level pieces. First off, you have governance. That's the overall, what are your policies? Who are the stakeholders? How does your program run? What are the vision and mission for your program? You have an application security program management team that basically they run your application security program. The application portfolio management, which in my opinion is the backbone from a tools and a processes standpoint. The application portfolio management is the backbone of an application security program. It ties all the other components together, or at least most of them from a pipeline standpoint, right? The center of excellence isn't necessarily tied to it, but from a pipeline standpoint, your pipeline starts with your application portfolio management. You have to know what applications you have. Right? You have to do your application discovery and find out, well, we had 20 applications that were written 25 years ago. They're in production. Nobody knows anything about them. You have to know those because those are huge vulnerabilities if you don't know anything about them. And then from there, your threat modeling and your risk profiling, all those other components that come from managing that application portfolio. As well, the supply chain management, obviously handling your software supply chain, your software bill of materials, your DevSecOps pipeline, vulnerability management and detection, and then your center of excellence. So those are the high level ones. Almost everything else that are in application security falls within those. And honestly, if you've ever looked at AppSec programs, what I just said is nothing new. This is how an application security program should be built, but it doesn't actually require holism to do what I just talked about. You could piecemeal your way all the way to a full application security program. It will cost you probably 10 times, if not more, the amount of money than it should, because you're going to attempt a tool, then buy another tool to do the same thing, buy another tool to do the same thing, hire other people to reconfigure, and eventually you're just going to throw so much money and resources, you're going to have an AppSec program that has all the pieces there. But what's vitally missing, and this is something that I've seen in industry over and over again, what's vitally missing is the holism. Just like traditional Eastern medicine views our bodies as a set of systems, they're not disparate systems. They all affect each other. When one system goes down or one system becomes impaired, the other systems also suffer. And in a holistic application security program, all these components talk to each other, or at least report to each other. It doesn't have to be bidirectional communication between these systems, but they do report, they do communicate. Any one of these systems that doesn't communicate to at least a higher system, like if you have an application security management program management. They should have, near the governance level, right? They should have a dashboard that gives you some insight. How are we doing? How many applications do we have? How many critical bug or critical vulnerabilities do we have in production? You should have that level of information, and it should not be a manual dashboard. It should be able to get all that data, or conversely, all that data from the subsystems, whether it's your SaaS, DAST, your vulnerability management system, threat modeling. All those should feed up into your dashboard. So you have that view all the way down. What kind of external software are we using? What kind of licenses do we have? All those pieces, if they work together, create application security holism. And that's something that unfortunately is lacking in industry, where people will implement these systems, but they won't implement it from a holistic standpoint. So you're not getting the full ability for your system to work all together and each system benefit the next. So what are the benefits of having a holistic AppSec program? Well, first off, there's an increased security posture. And now I'm going to preach to the choir a little bit. This stuff is usually known. When we talk about risk management, application security, one of the first parts of it is you're doing it typically to increase your security posture, reduce your threat landscape, and in order to do that, a holistic AppSec program that includes all these components allows you to understand your threat landscape. You can't fix it until you understand it. What are all the programs you have? What are the applications that you're exposing to the external world or internally? What are the threats to these programs from either insider threat or an external threat? Before you can do anything, you have to understand what your threat landscape is. Next, you can then assess your situation, start doing your threat modeling, your risk profiling, as well as your DevSecOps automated security testing with SaaS, DAST, and the other components, software composition analysis and such. It also allows you then to address your security issues through a vulnerability management program. And then from there, it allows you to inform your decision makers. So this is what's going right. This is what's not going right, allowing you to make better decisions in the future, prioritizing, exception handling, things like that. So those are the known pieces. And that's something we do is we build our programs off of understand, assess, address, inform. Another thing that may not be as known as one of the benefits from a holistic AppSec program is that you can focus implementing security controls that actually increase security. Now, everybody that's a pen tester that's listening to me right now is going to not like me for the next couple minutes, but I promise I'll bring it around. So pen testing is one of those, I like picking on it as a security control, because if done properly, it can vastly increase your security posture. It can just, it's one of the best ways to find vulnerabilities before they go into the wild from a human perspective. But there are caveats to that, and let me explain. So I had a client one time that implemented a pen testing program, and what happened was that there was no consideration for that pen testing program and what exactly pen testing was supposed to accomplish, right? Which is to increase your security by identifying vulnerabilities and obviously lowering your threat or attack surface. And this client, what they did was they allowed developers to request pen tests for every release. And So every time a developer did a release, they requested a pen test, and this company was paying quite a bit for these pen tests. They were standard 1 week per application pen tests. And so what happened was they had a certain budget. I think it was $1 million budget for the year for pen tests, and they ran out of that budget within 3 months. And when they looked back to figure out what happened, there was no understanding of when you do a pen test, or not just understanding, but questioning, why are you doing a pen test, right? It's to find vulnerabilities. But what was happening is they didn't define what a release was, right? Was it a minor release? Was it a major release? How many functions or features were changed or added? So for every release, these developers were requesting a pen test. Not because they were trying to be malicious, but simply because that was part of the process. You're going to release software to production, you request a pen test. But that included, if there was changes in the HTML or the CSS to change the blue button to a red button, and they made a release, now they're allowed to ask for a pen test, and that's what they were doing. And because there was no holistic management of that, no understanding of what they were trying to do with that security control, they blew through their budget so fast. And it caused some serious issues because that was 3/4 of a year that they weren't able to do pen tests anymore. So that's a significant issue. They blew through their budget that fast. Another benefit, or decreasing your budget risk, is in making sure that you apply the right controls appropriately. So I usually use the extreme. Everybody uses the cafeteria menu program as like the smallest risk profile application out there. I like to use the nuclear codes program, which is my fictitious program that is obviously a web page that you go to, you log in, and you can download the nuclear codes to, fire off nukes. Obviously that doesn't exist, but that's the nuclear codes program, right, that I use. So between these two, it's intuitive that we would be spending more money on securing the nuclear codes program than our cafeteria menu program. But it's not always so. If these application programs are not built with a strategic understanding of what you're trying to do and how to spend the budget in the most appropriate place in order to do get the biggest bang for your buck, really, you want to apply those security controls appropriately. I had a client that they mandated for all their high-level financial applications, they mandated a threat model every 2 years, regardless of whether anything changed. That was just part of their process because they were high-risk, high-profile applications that could, have some serious ramifications to the market if anything went wrong. So that was part of their mandate. Cafeteria menu for them, it probably would have had a threat model the first time it was created, and based on their program, I don't know when it would ever have a threat model again. The point is budget needs to go where it will give you the biggest security improvement or the biggest jump in security posture. And using application risk profiles in a holistic program is going to help accomplish that. As well, program components that work together decrease ineffective efforts. Okay, I'm going to pick on pen testers again. Sorry, people, I love you to death, but again, this is about holism, not about pen tests themselves. I have a saying: pen testing in a vacuum. Let me start again. Pen testing in a vacuum does not actually increase your security. And this actually factors in the decreasing the budget and decreasing liability. And let me say why. If I were a police officer, which I was, and you said, In order to make society safer, we're going to identify all the murderers and identify them. We're going to write a report, get all their information, and that's it, right? So I go out as a police officer and I find all the murderers. I find all of them and I get their names. What's your name? What's your number? Where do you live? They give me all this information. I go back to the police station. I say, here's my report, right? In all the murderers. Here's all the murderers, right? This one said he's going to murder tomorrow. This one, murdered yesterday. What actually did I do? Did I make society safer? I didn't. All I've done is identify where the murderers are. Now, obviously, society would be safer if the people that commit murder are behind bars or in jail or something like that. Or as a wise man once gave me as an analogy, he said it's like going to the doctor and the doctor telling you have cancer and then not doing anything about it, right? So pen testers are vital. Like that, pen testing is a vital component. But if you don't fix those vulnerabilities pen testers find, you haven't increased security. Pen testing and vulnerability management have to go hand in hand. If you don't have some kind of program to fix these vulnerabilities or manage them, triage them, while you're checking off a component on the checklist as far as security controls, you're not actually implementing a security control that increases the state of your security posture drastically, right? If you put pen testing and vulnerability management in side by side, now you have a force multiplier to increase your security posture. And finally, one of the benefits of an application security program that's holistic, it decreases your liability. So one of them, obviously the most popular one, is that it decreases your compliance liability, right? So if you're subject to PCI or HIPAA, and you can check the checkbox, that helps decrease your liability, right? But from a holistic standpoint, the goal isn't just to check the checkbox. Somebody has a job. They want to make sure we're in compliance so we don't get hit with a fine. But when you're looking at holistic application security, you can implement controls that not only check the checkbox for compliance, but also practically increase the security posture within your application security program. So it's a 2-for-1. The next part is, and this is again one of those ones that's not often thought about, but as soon as I give you the example, you're going to be like, yeah, that totally makes sense. So one of the issues where liability comes about is when you have threats or vulnerabilities and you're liable for the existence of those vulnerabilities. Not just that they're there, but that you knew that they were there. And let me take a step back. I'm going to use a car example because we've all seen this happen before. So the way liability works, right? Basically, I'm super simplifying this. Let's say the car manufacturer puts in a faulty seat mover, right? The mechanism that moves your seat forward and back. And it's faulty. So you're driving along and that seat mover mechanism fails and you get squished against your steering wheel. Let's say you don't break anything, but you have to go to the emergency room, and that's going to cost some money. You have to get some medication because you're in some pain. That's going to cost some money. Plus now your seat doesn't work anymore, right? Let's just say that's all the damage that you suffer. And let's just say that was $10,000 worth of money that it cost you to fix yourself, right? So you can go to court, you can sue the company and say, I want my $10,000. You caused me $10,000 worth of damage. I want the $10,000, right? But then there's the second part. What if that company knew that they had that vulnerability, right? And we've all seen this before. Companies that know, not just or we heard this happen and we're doing some research and gathering data, but no, we did research. We gathered data. We know we have a faulty issue. We're not doing a recall. We're not doing anything, We're just ignoring the problem, but we know it's there and we know it's causing damage to people. What happens then is the courts then go after those companies for extra damages or fines or penalties because they're punishing them for having known about the issue and having done nothing about it. So they actually increase the risk to the consumers. It wasn't like a, whoops, life happens, my bad, I'm sorry, here's the money to make you whole again. But now we're going to penalize you because you knew it was there, you did nothing about it. And we expose ourselves in the software industry, and this isn't the first time it's happened. I mean, this has happened before. I think there was Cisco had an issue where they violated the I'm trying to think, the U.S. False Claims Act, and they had a vulnerability. They didn't remediate, and then they got slammed with a massive penalty. So if you implement some of these controls, right, and especially with vulnerability management, if you implement a SAST control or a DAST control or a pen testing control where all these are finding vulnerabilities and generating these reports where now you know you have these vulnerabilities and you do nothing, you don't have a vulnerability management program to triage these and remediate them, or provide exceptions for a certain amount of time or something like that, you expose yourself to that same liability where you knew you had foreknowledge of that vulnerability. And if somebody loses money, it's not a simple matter of now you have to pay them, whatever damages because of your negligence or whatever. But now you open yourself up to liability for getting penalized by the government in whatever other, government agencies that will penalize you and fine you. So having a holistic application security program actually reduces the likelihood of those types of penalties because you're proactively managing those vulnerabilities before they get into the wild. So where do we begin? How do we begin implementing an application security program that's holistic? And the answer is questions. It has to start with questions. Like I had talked about earlier, SAM and BSIM provide good checklists for the components that should be there. But without knowing your situation, what are your actual goals? What are your pain points? What are your budget points? What do you have now? I mean, in the end, you could almost check off every SAM checkbox to say my program is fully mature. However, your actual security posture could be significantly less than what you expect. Just because you have a SaaS tool and it's implemented and it's in your pipeline, it does not mean it's been implemented properly. And that goes for every single tool. Your application program management, how you do application discovery may not be enough to find all applications that you have. Maybe it's only set to find web applications or active web applications. Maybe you have an application that's exposed on the web that hasn't been used in 10 years, but it's still up there running, right? So it's not simply a matter of having all these components in place. It's understanding what your issues are, what your goals are, and then creating a program that address those goals. Because in the end, right, we don't, this isn't Legos. We can't go in and implement an application security program by just throwing a whole bunch of Lego blocks onto it, and now you have the best program in the world, right? We all know that there's acculturation that has to happen. And that's not like fitting two Legos together. We have to go in and help educate people as to why this is important. And you do that by asking questions and more questions and more questions. Because understanding, if you don't understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, what your threat landscape is, what your application portfolio is. If you don't understand all that, if you haven't asked those questions, you are not going to be able to implement a holistic application security program. I am available for any questions in the Discord. If you would meet me over there, I would love to answer all the questions you have. Thank you.